Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Wudi as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on YouTube from an act named Yorushika titled Plagiarism, and we're going to listen through it from start to finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go! I mean, it's just so gentle at the start with that really kind of low-key drum beat. The vocals notched perfectly in that higher range. Great presence to the guitars and everything with interesting panning. Really soulful guitar solo here. Where it works really well with the swing phrase, and then we have the drum kit as well. So is this about imposter syndrome? Is that it? Great layering of the keys over here. I was wondering when that would turn. Still not enough. Oh, okay. Great cascading keys there in the transition. Alright, fascinating. That's an interesting piece. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Yorushika titled Plagiarism. Now, what do I think this track is about? You know, based on what I read from the lyrics and the journey that we go through, I've got a bit of a blocked nose today. I think this track is about someone who is legitimately struggling, maybe with like imposter syndrome, thinking that they don't deserve the success they've had. Maybe they did legitimately steal a riff from someone, but I think when they talk about the record player earlier on, they may be talking about the inspirations and how they took from those inspirations to create the music that they've put out. And they're talking about how they almost fantasize about, everyone finding out that they stole the track and then they lose everything, and how they'll feel better than they do now because then they'll have nothing, but it was better than having something because they felt so guilty when they had something. I'm not sure. And then they still want more and more. They still want to write music. I think basically this track is the epitome of being unsatisfied. It's all the various forms of that. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And it's an interesting angle to take here. I do wonder if Yorushika has had to deal with people saying that they copied music or something like that, or they copied the aesthetic or ideas of it, and this is their response to it, and like talking about how it makes them feel. But that's my take on what the track's about anyways. The vocals are phenomenal. I'm really happy with the way we expressed ourselves. The emotional tension there was believable. We had great control of our head and chest voice there. Interesting use of legato, bits of legato phrasing and ornamentation occasionally. Various intensities to the way that it was sung. And I liked the male harmonies we had in the chorus sections as well. We had a really catchy hook line that worked well with the rest of the backing, and the verses were explorative. We also knew to not sing all the time so that other instruments such as the keys and the guitar could have their sections respectively. I think that the way that the song was sung made sense with the lyrics. And the track at just over 4 minutes is splendid. It's really well structured, a little bit outside of the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot that I commonly talk about with these reviews, but that's okay. Because what we've got going on is a situation where we basically had a really full sounding piece with the guitars, the keys, the drums and the bass. We did not need more. We started with that drum beat, that simple kind of groove, vocals on top, bringing the guitar and bass that came along with the pianos to come. And ultimately, it was just really well developed. I mean, I could be misremembering that. I think that's how they came in. Let me know if I've got that incorrect. But the vocal melodies are splendid. The way that the track flowed between the instrumental parts, the verses to the choruses, with the couple of solo sections, like I think there's a guitar solo and then there's like an instrumental section, like an interlude later on. It was just really full of different interesting ideas that were not too different, but there's enough of a variety to keep us interested and engaged the whole time, with the catchy bits being emphasized but also being a lot of range in regards to the performance and the composition. I think if I talk about a few of my favorite parts, the guitars were sensational. We had like strummed guitars, like clean parts, and a bit crispy rhythm guitars as well in the choruses and such, with a lovely balance of like that grit and that sheen. It was really pretty, and they were placed in different parts of the stereo field as well, so you could hear them individually. It explored the headphones. If you haven't listened to this track through headphones before, I thoroughly recommend it. The use of like triads as well as interesting arpeggiated phrasings, and the lead solo that we had there was exceptional, really well versed, worked well with the swing groove of the percussion and everything else, and was generally very charismatic and upbeat without sort of being too full of itself. It didn't overplay and was very respectful to what was introduced by the vocals and those verse and chorus melodies. Was showing off a little bit with the different techniques. We had lots of legato, little bendy parts, vibratos, etc. It was well phrased. It was very appropriate. And we explored the scale shapes really nicely. The bass guitar did have a bit of movement to flow around. It didn't just stay with the root notes, but when it did, it was because it needed to, and otherwise, just because the overall harmony and all the various little intricate happenings were quite complex. And I think if the bass player had been too wild with their different note choices, it would have just been a little bit too much. We needed that tightness in the low end, and we had it. The drums were phenomenal. I love the swing groove with the triplets there. Great exploration of like the kicks and snares and different cymbal ideas there. I think we had some fills occasionally, but it was mostly all about the hi-hat, kick and snare beats, such as the start throughout. And we had like rides and stuff, but it was predominantly based on the sort of like the hi-hat grooves. And I think that was exactly what we needed. It keeps it relatively accessible, and it's got a great sense of like you nod your head to it easily off the bat. Absolutely no filler throughout this track whatsoever. The keys were elegant when they came in with the arpeggiated phrasing, the cascading parts, the soloish kind of phrasing in that interlude section later on. We're very sort of comfortable with our right hand, and I think if we'd had too much going on with the left, it would have just been a little bit too much in the mid to low ranges there, so I'm glad that we focused in that upper echelon, that upper frequency spectrum. And I think in general these instruments segged together and niched really well, and was very satisfying to listen to, because it just felt really full sounding. Like everything had a place in the frequency spectrum and the stereo field, which is just much a composition thing as a post-production thing. The theme overall sounded like we were trying to keep relatively positive about it, that the process we were going through with this sort of struggle with plagiarism, you know, that struggle is worthwhile. I think that's it. I think if you'd had too many minor focuses here with the darkness, or if you tried to confuse the harmonies too much with extensions, it might have just been a little bit too kind of sinister sounding. So I'm glad that we didn't get too kind of beaten down with those choices there with the chords. The perkiness of the guitar leads and the chorus with the way the vocals segged with them instantiated the fact that even though again the story wasn't a particularly positive or happy one, we weren't allowing it to completely destroy things, and we could see a silver lining in the situation. Finally, the studio recording, mixing and mastering, I think that was done incredibly well. The vocals had a great presence, so did the guitars, bass, drums and keys. Things were nice and wide in the stereo field, as well as really well niched in the frequency spectrum, as I said before, with the filtering and EQing being on point. Didn't have a whole lot of exploration with like the automation or like the different panning parts or anything like that. We didn't need to. It was a straightforward studio performance there. There was a lot of dynamic range. I really liked how it came down after those big choruses and lead sections, just down to the verse there. It was a bit quieter. It added a sense of like dimensionality to it. So the dynamic range was sorted. There were changes in loudness, but it was still nice and loud without pumping. So the bus compression and leveling was handled well. Limiting, should I say, was handled well. And I just think in general, it was just a really well captured performance. The recordings were on point, the quality of it was great, and it didn't sound overproduced. I mean, this is effectively my review of this track from an actor named Yorushika. Total plagiarism, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show us some love via their various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SU Patrons video. Spiderhands out.